And now we move to the next speaker, Councillor Stintz.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The issue that Councillor Walker is raising is really one of how do we ensure that our planning process and what we agreed to during a planning phase is actually realized when we go to the real estate phase. And I think it's important that we understand it in that context, that these lands will go to Build Toronto. And once these lands are transferred to Build Toronto, Council will no longer have an opportunity to put any kind of agreement on these lands. And the reason that the reason you can put a strata agreement on these lands is because there are lands. And I think there may be an argument if we wanted to impose a strata agreement in advance of a comprehensive planning process, that maybe there would be an argument here today that this was premature. But in reality, we've been working on this process for 5 years. And what we have in front of us is a planning proposal that permits 40 stories, 2 40-story towers on this site. So to your point, Councillor Moscow, the heights and the densities it's been recognized in the planning document that it's appropriate for this site. And what we want to make sure is when we go to the market that we value these lands correctly. Because what we don't want to do is put a planning framework in place and then have the land be overvalued and then have the developer come back and say, well, I can't make it work, I need another 20 stories. Because that would fundamentally undermine the process that's been gone through. And I'd like to take this opportunity to note another little small irony, that although the solicitor has a different opinion on it, if this council wants to guarantee that there is absolutely no political interference in this process heretofore, put the strata agreement in. Because then you have a guarantee from Councillor Walker and myself and the communities that we represent that we will have confidence and comfort in the process moving forward. And so if we decide to transfer these lands to Build Toronto in June, they can be sold in September, and a building permit can be issued by January, as long as it's within the planning framework. And if the strata agreement is in place, then the development of this land will happen. It'll happen. If the strata agreement is not in place, then what we open ourselves up to is risk that we sell the land at too high a value, we're back into a contentious planning process, that we have appeals at the OMB, and that we drag out the development of this site for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Nobody wants that. If anyone has been to that corner, they will know that it is in our interest, in our city interest, to develop that land as quickly as we can. But in so doing, we need to be reasonable about our expectations of the price of that land, and it needs to be consistent with the planning framework that the planning department has worked on with the community and the local councillor. So we're at a moment in time where we actually can align all of our activities in a very, very comprehensive way to make sure that we put in place a process by which these lands can get developed as quickly as possible, with as little interference as possible, with maximum value to the city, with maximum value to the TTC in a document that they authored, with maximum value to the developer, and with maximum value to the community. What Councillor Walker is proposing is a win-win situation for every single stakeholder that is involved in this process. And while I appreciate and understand the arguments made by our legal department, the reality is this is the only moment in time that we can put forward these recommendations. Because after this planning document is passed, after the lands get transferred to Build Toronto, we will have no more opportunity to comment on what will happen on these lands. And let's also, if I can underscore one final point, the strata agreement does not preclude additional height and density. It does not. In fact, the strata agreement makes no comment on density. So there's plenty of opportunity to talk about density. And if the developer wants additional height, they just come back and they make us an offer for the additional height. But it's clean and it's transparent. It actually doesn't even need to involve the OMB. It can be done through this council with a guarantee that there will be no political interference with the development of this land. And that is an outcome we should all strive for. Please support Councillor Walker. He has put forward this process and these motions in good faith with his community.
All in favor, opposed, carried.
And he is offering us reasonable recommendations to protect the integrity of the process that he has been committed to. Thank you.